Good morning. Good morning. What a powerful way to start the morning. It's an absolute privilege to be here with all of you this morning. Quick show of hands. Who were the ones that were so brave to actually did the yoga thing this morning after last night? We've got some brave souls at the back there. Well done. Well done. Fantastic. So, the robots are coming. The robots are coming for your jobs. Or are they? This is the fascinating tension that currently exists within the field of artificial intelligence. In the blue corner, you have the school of thought that says, AI will essentially usher in the next renaissance. It's going to give birth to millions of new jobs. It's going to create hundreds of new industries. It's going to solve problems we didn't even know we had. And we all have so much free time on our hands that we're not going to know what to do with ourselves. This is made famous by experts such as Peter Diamandis, Stephen Kotler, Ray Kurzweil, Matt Ridley, all experts in their field, all passionately advocating for their point of view. In the red corner, you've got another school of thought that says, what the hell are you guys smoking? These jobs that you're talking about that AI will be creating, no, AI is going to be destroying jobs. And by the way, these industries that you're talking about that's going to be created, AI will be wiping away industries. And if you're not careful, AI is going to be coming after us as human beings and wiping us out as well. And this is made famous by guys like Elon Musk, the late great Professor Stephen Hawking, and Bill Gates, amongst others. So what I'd like to do for the next 30 minutes while we're together is just unpack this tension in a bit more detail, see what that means in the context of procurement jobs, and then see what we can do about that together. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So why now? Why is AI so topical now? It's been around since the 1950s, so why is everybody jumping on this bandwagon now? What's so different? This is the headline of in 1894 of the London Times, because in order to actually answer that question, we need to take a bit of a step back and understand how we think as human beings. This slide aims to illustrate one key point. We are very, very good as human beings about thinking linearly, all right? But we absolutely suck when it comes to thinking exponentially. So let me explain what I mean by that. So if you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30 steps later you're at 30. You have a very clear idea of how you got from where you were to where you are now, and you know for certain that if you take another 30 steps forward, that you're comfortable with that world, you're going to be at 60, and there's a frame of reference, right? If you take 30 exponential steps, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 30 steps later, you're at 1 billion. Well, actually 1,076 million, but I'm not counting. So 30 steps later, you're at 1 billion. You have no idea what that world looks like. You have no frame of reference, and that's a very, very scary place to be in. In 1885, needless to say, the motor vehicle was already invented. So this is 9 years later already, right? And by 1950, I don't even have to highlight that the horse industry was essentially wiped out by motor vehicles. So no idea, no context of what that exponential technological progress would look like. So why is that important? Well, this is Gordon Moore. He co-founded a little company called Intel in 1958. And essentially, by 1965, he said that, hey, we're noticing something very interesting. We noticed that the amount of transistors on an integrated circuit is essentially doubling every 18 months or so. So for those of you who don't know, integrated circuits are those black little chips that are basically pervasive in all types of electronics, right? This essentially became known as Moore's Law. And here's the cool thing about that. It is still happening today. We are still noticing that roughly 18 months or so, the amount of transistors on an integrated circuit is doubling in terms of capacity. Well, let me give you an idea of what that actually looks like. On the left-hand side, you will see that it's essentially the first integrated circuit that was done in 1958. It's got 2 transistors, and it cost the equivalent of roughly $30, right? Fast forward 60 years, and now suddenly we can fit 7 billion transistors on an integrated circuit. That's within a 60-year period. In other words, this device right here that I have in my hand has more computing capability than it took the entire NASA team to land a man on the moon in 1969. So when you drop this in the toilet accidentally at night, you just crash the moon landing. Okay. Let's put that another way. $1,000 essentially today buys you this device's capability. Fast forward 5 years from now, and $1,000 buys you the equivalent computing capability of the entire of a human brain, right? That's about 10 to the power of 16. By 2050, we're talking about the same $1,000 buying you the computing capability of the entire human race. Now your kids' homework gets really easy. If we reframe that and we actually look back, 10 years ago, I bought a 42-inch LG TV for about 20,000 Rand. I was very proud of my first purchase. Today, I can pick that TV up for about 4,000 bucks, right? So 400% decrease in price for the same capability. Okay, but those things are interesting, so why am I telling you all of this? So Moore's law, because of that, this exponential technologies is converging, it's doubling, and it's actually accelerating, right? It's a synergistic type of relationships that's giving birth to new types of business model across the continuum. So let's take big data, for example, right? In 2017, there was more data created than in the last 5,000 years of humanity, just in that year alone. If you take IoT sensors, which is Internet of Things, the buzzword that everybody's talking about lately, it's decreased essentially in the last 5 years by 90% in terms of price for the same capability. Cloud computing, we are no longer talking about whether we should go to the cloud or not. We know that as a business, we absolutely must go to the cloud in order to stay relevant, right? My nephew that's 10 years old, he's got more computing capability as a result of the cloud in his hand than what the whole entire South African government had 10, 15 years ago. 3D printing, right? 10 years ago, we could print maybe 5 types of devices with 3D printing at an average cost of about 40,000 US dollars. Today, we can print 400 types of, including glass, in terms of what we can actually 3D print. Anybody in the room ever heard of the Human Genome Project? Okay, we've got Africa, thank you. So basically, 15 years ago, to sequence your genome would have cost $2.7 billion. Today, I can get my genome sequenced for about $100. Right? 5 years from now, it'll cost a penny. My toilet will be sequencing my genome, scanning for diseases as things progress. And so the list goes on. Right? You can pick any of these exponential technologies and it gives you context as how they've exponentially doubled in terms of their capacity and capability. But we need to understand and get a common understanding actually of what AI is. So what is this thing we call AI? How do we define it? What exactly is it, right? Here's a dirty little secret that experts and researchers in the field of artificial intelligence don't want you to know. They cannot agree on what AI is. If you ask 10 experts, they'll give you 10 different answers as to what artificial intelligence actually is. What they do agree on, however, is the outcome artificial intelligence is trying to achieve, which is essentially creating machines that think like humans, or better, and that's probably the scary part. The other thing that they also agree on is the 3 types of artificial intelligence that you get, which is essentially artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence. So let's unpack each one of that very quickly. So ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, this is essentially when you interact with stuff like weather bots, chat bots, recommendation engines. You guys have seen on the websites when you browse and this little guy appears here in the corner at the bottom asking how he can help you. You know, that's usually a chatbot capability. Do you guys know when Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov at chess in the 1990s? Know when it made news? Or when Google's AI beat the world Go champion about 2 years ago? Those are all examples of artificial narrow intelligence, right? Artificial general intelligence will be labeled when machines can pass two tests, one of two tests, either the Turing test or the coffee test. So quite simply, for those of you in the room that don't know, Turing test is two humans and a machine where the one human actually interviews either the human or the machine. And if I'm unable to distinguish which one is which, that machine would have been labeled to pass the Turing test and have been basically artificially generally intelligent. Coffee test will ask a machine to go identify a cup of coffee, identify coffee in a house and make a cup. And if it's deemed to do that, then artificially generally intelligent. Then it gets a bit more scary. So artificial super intelligence, these are things like Artilex, right? And this is basically artificially intelligent machines that are superior to human beings in every single way possible. And this is really what freaks people out, because if our intelligence is what has created and made us the most dominant species on this planet, giving birth to something that's potentially more intelligent than us is very scary. And some people are saying it's actually quite stupid because you are committing suicide long term. Okay. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's understand what this then means in the context of jobs. Let's look at autonomous vehicles, which is really doing the rounds and getting a lot of media hype in the context of the transportation industry. So the next clip will aim to give you a bit of context around that. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit in the context of what you've just seen, right? So there are roughly 3.5 million truck drivers in the US alone. That's one of the most popular jobs that there's around. So combine that with the 200,000 taxis that you get, about 700,000 bus drivers, postal delivery services, transit drivers, you get to see that it's about 4.5 million jobs that are at risk right now. Not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now, right now, right? And then it's not a leap to actually think about, well, if they can make autonomous vehicles, then actually, what about trains? Already France is talking about wanting to launch 24/7 autonomous trains by 2023. And guess what? China has just recently unveiled its first autonomous train. So already we're not talking 2023, we're talking right now. BMW just built an autonomous motorbike that is able to drive by itself. You get to actually summon it on your phone and it'll come to you wherever you are. Autonomous submarines and autonomous ships, we actually are not even hearing about that, but great strides are being made in those fields as well. Think about the implications from a job perspective that is actually heralding in. Dongguan Province, China. This is exactly what happened in one of those factories. The owner said, that's it, I'm over this. Let 90% of the workforce go, replace them with AI-imbued automation, experience the following results. 250% increase in productivity, an 80% decrease in defects, and I now run my factory 24/7. You cannot argue as a business with numbers like that, right? What does that mean for those people that were actually let go? Anybody in here heard about Amazon Go? Okay, we've got one here. Amazon Go is essentially Amazon's flavor on cashierless stores. So you basically walk in, take what you want, it's linked to your credit card, and you walk out. There are 8 million cashiers in the US alone. Pick a Pay is trialing cashierless outlets right now. ShopRite is looking at this right now. What does that mean for cashiers within this country? Because this technology is coming whether you like it or not. Let's talk about call center agents. Right now, I can replace probably half of call center capabilities with chatbot capability that is able to service and take care of the low-level queries that are there, right? Travel agents, another industry that's going to be ripe for disruption as a result of this technology. So here's the key nugget. As a business, if you want to stay relevant, if you actually want to ensure that there's longevity for you, you have no choice. You have to respond, you have to adapt, and you have to embrace these technologies. Okay, so that's the view from the red corner, right? The blue corner is saying, whoa, guys, just take a chill pill, okay? So technology has always created more jobs than what it's actually displaced. So let's take a look at the ATM for an example. There was a fear that ATMs would essentially herald the end of bank tellers. What actually happened was ATMs allowed the banks to reduce their costs, open up more branches, and as a result, more bank tellers were actually employed, right? Let's look at the industries that have sprung up around the motor vehicle. We're talking about logistics, we're talking about insurance, we're talking about the service industry. You know, employing thousands and thousands of people right now as a result of the advancement in technology for motor vehicles. Amazon recently, in the last 3 years, they went from 7,000 robots within their factories to about 45,000 robots in their factories. Not a single job has been displaced as a result. Let's take a look at some of the more basic other technologies out there. Flight, right? The airline industry employs thousands of people. The steam engine, whether it is electricity, look at all those jobs that have been created as a result. And the blue corner is advocating this time, this AI fear-mongering that's happening, you know, it's going to be no different. We're going to have massive amounts of jobs that are going to be created as a result. Matt Ridley talks about, in his brilliant book, The Rational Optimist, he talks about how $76 of every $100 that was made in the 1910s basically went to necessities such as food, shelter, water, those sorts of things, basic necessities. Today, as a result of the advancement in technology, we're looking at about $30. That is all down to tech, and the quality of life has improved as a result. So what does this mean for procurement jobs, right? What is happening in this field? How are we applying technology to actually help accelerate the value here, but still be cognizant of the potential risk that it might pose? So at SAP, we have this vision of intelligent procurement, right? If you consider what we've done in augmenting and imbuing all of these exponential technologies in our procurement suite, you get to see what it is that we're trying to accelerate and where it is that we're actually moving towards. And the goal that we will have is that for specifically intelligent procurement is that these mundane tasks that are not adding much to the top or bottom line of the organization but are actually so labor intensive, we actually want to help automate that so that the human element can then focus on more strategic functions and higher value adding functions in that organization. So everything in terms of the products that we're building around accelerating procurements and supply chains, it is with this mandate that we are imbuing these exponential technologies such as AI, blockchain, analytics, big data in these products so that it can help automate and help increase the value add that we want to offer. Let's have a look at the next clip to help illustrate this point.
One DSC is certainly the largest project of my career. If we think about where companies are heading, where the industry is headed, it's very clear that you have to put in place a platform that it really drives digital transformation.
We, in our manufacturing and supply chain organization, own the entire process for product development. And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions that happen along the way to make that a reality.
Microsoft chose and entered into a co-innovation agreement with SAP to deliver best-in-class solutions for our sourcing organization.
When we first saw a demo of the IBP Ariba solution integrated, what we really noticed is we can have a very tight understanding of our inventory in whatever state it may be, at wherever place it may be in the world, and see how that feeds back to our inventory investment at any point in time. To understand what was taking place with those suppliers and to be able to connect with them in the cycle of planning through procurement execution.
Integrating all of the apps and internal back-end systems into one platform is the only real way to build an intelligent supply chain.
If we just take a look at our capital utilization, we're seeing $300 million of working capital improvement with a 5% increase in our on-time in full measurements. Our service levels are going up. Our inventory levels are down to support the same in customer demand.
I think the total right now is close to $200 million of inventory drained from our surface supply chain. Over $15 million savings in cost of goods procured.
We're freeing people up to focus on higher value activities. And I think ultimately it's more rewarding for their careers when people are not serving the tools and technology, but the technology is serving them.
If you can paint that vision and explain to people where you're going and how this is ultimately going to change their lives for the better in the long term, people love that. People will rally around that, and it becomes a very exciting mission for the organization.
If you just look at how, like I've mentioned earlier, the types of functions that we're looking at imbuing these technologies into, whether it's contract intelligence, whether it's spend analytics, supplier intelligence, etc., sourcing intelligence, all of these functional capabilities are going to be augmented with these technologies moving forward. What does that mean for your workforce today? How are you able to reorganize your functions to focus on higher value adding functions while these mundane activities are actually being intelligently automated? So what can we do about this coming wave? How can we help to future-proof ourselves? That AI will displace jobs is without a doubt. There's no question about that, right? That AI will also create jobs, that's certainly without a doubt as well. AI, as with all other technologies, will definitely be creating jobs. How we manage the gap between the displacement of jobs and the creation of other jobs, that's going to be critical, right? Not just for us as organizations, but actually for us as society as well. We must focus on reskilling ourselves now. Gone are the days of actually focusing on one skill, being really good at that, and that's going to be what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. Multifaceted skills, multi-focused areas of skills is actually what is going to help future-proof us from a employee perspective, right? So what are the new opportunities you are seeing rising in your industry right now? How do you prepare for those? What are the skills that you can see that are on the rise right now? How do you diversify your income streams? You cannot rely on one job anymore to actually supplement your income stream. The more diverse your income streams are, the better for you, right? You mitigate your risk right there, because if a technology comes tomorrow that displaces your job, you have something else to fall back on. And then lastly, embrace the change, right? This is happening, it's coming. It's about how we adapt. As a species, we have adapted for nearly 250,000 years. It's just going to require higher levels of adaptation right now for us to continue to thrive. And I'm always reminded of this analogy because there's a big tension and almost a lack of an argument right now around, well, is it artificial intelligence versus human intelligence? And personally, I like to adapt the view of, well, actually it's going to be augmented human intelligence, right? And what I mean by that is just as we learn to ride the horse and make it work for us, we will learn to make AI work for us. It's stupid to think about you running against the horse and then blaming the horse for running faster than you, because that's what the horse is good at, right? So let us not think about competing with AI. Let's think about it in the context of how we utilize AI. How do we augment our own skills and capabilities so that we can leverage this technology to maximize the benefits that it provides us while we minimize the risks that it poses. And that's it.